The Midnight Gym, Surviving the Haunting Game Must-Watch Horror Experience. Chapter 1, The Unholy Punishment. The school hallway, usually bustling with chatter and laughter, was now a mausoleum of whispers and anxious shuffling. Flickering fluorescent lights cast long, twitching shadows along the walls, amplifying the eerie quiet that had settled over the students. Alex paced nervously near the rows of lockers, his breath visible in the chill of the early morning air, which seemed to seep into every corner of the school. The clock above the main entrance ticked away with a mocking slowness, its hands creeping toward the dreaded hour. Rumors had spread like wildfire through the student body. The hushed speculation of a cruel punishment, an early morning gym class, was now a reality. The school's administration had remained tight-lipped, adding fuel to the fire of speculation. Some said it was a rite of passage, a test of endurance for those who had been caught breaking rules. Others whispered about the gym's dark history and its ghostly inhabitants. Among the assembled students, Alex stood out with his apprehensive demeanor. His lean frame was rigid, eyes darting nervously as he tried to decipher the purpose of this bizarre punishment. Next to him, Emma was trying to mask her anxiety with a brave face. Her usually bright eyes were shadowed by uncertainty, but she forced a smile at Alex, trying to offer him some semblance of reassurance. Ryan, on the other hand, leaned casually against the wall, his demeanor a facade of nonchalance. Yet, his eyes betrayed a flicker of worry as he glanced around, sensing the discomfort in the air. Mr. Thompson, the gym teacher, emerged from the depths of the hallway, his presence commanding silence. He wore a stern expression, his graying hair falling in disheveled strands around his face. He looked every bit the part of someone burdened with secrets, his gaze piercing through the students as if he could read their thoughts. "Let's move," he said curtly, turning on his heel and leading the group toward the gym. As the students followed, the temperature seemed to drop further. The chill in the air grew more palpable, a biting cold that nipped at their skin. They made their way through a maze of dimly lit corridors, the walls lined with faded posters and old trophies, their footsteps echoing ominously. Upon reaching the gym, the heavy wooden doors creaked open with a groan that resonated through the empty space. The sight that greeted them was unnerving. The gym was enveloped in an oppressive silence, with only the intermittent flicker of the overhead lights breaking the darkness. The large room, usually a place of noise and activity, was now a cavern of shadows and foreboding. Alex shivered as he stepped inside, the cold air biting at his cheeks. The gymnasium's floor, usually polished and reflective, was now marred by a thick layer of dust. The bleachers, looming like silent sentinels in the gloom, cast long, twisted shadows that danced and swayed with each flicker of light. The weight of the emptiness was almost tangible, settling heavily on their shoulders. As the students gathered in the center of the gym, their nervous chatter was abruptly cut off by a sudden clanging sound. It was as if someone had dropped a heavy object in the distance. The noise reverberated off the walls, a jarring reminder of their isolation. From the dimly lit corners of the locker rooms, faint rustling sounds began to emerge, soft and shuffling, almost imperceptible but undeniably present. "Begin your exercises," Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the tension, his tone devoid of any warmth. "You have an hour. I will be back to check on your progress." With that, he turned and walked toward the shadows, his footsteps fading into the distance. The students were left alone, their breaths coming out in visible puffs of steam as they exchanged anxious glances. Alex's heart raced as he and his peers moved to start their exercises. The strange noises from the locker rooms and the unsettling ambiance made every creak and groan of the building seem magnified. Emma glanced nervously at the darkened corners of the gym, her movements jittery as she attempted to perform her stretches. Ryan, trying to appear unfazed, took a deep breath and began his workout, though his eyes frequently darted toward the shadows. As they continued, the flickering lights overhead seemed to strobe in a rhythm that was almost rhythmic in its unsettling nature. The cold seemed to seep deeper into their bones, making each breath feel like an effort. The group's unease grew with each passing minute, their earlier chatter replaced by strained silence and occasional hushed whispers. The eerie atmosphere hung heavily over them, and the sense of something being terribly wrong grew stronger with every passing second. The shadows on the bleachers seemed to move of their own accord, and the sounds from the locker rooms grew more pronounced, with whispers and thumps echoing ominously through the gym. The students were now fully immersed in the unnerving experience, their earlier bravado giving way to genuine fear. They were no longer simply completing an exercise. They were part of a disturbing, unseen game. And as the clock ticked relentlessly toward the end of their ordeal, the gym's secrets remained firmly shrouded in darkness, waiting to be uncovered. The tension was palpable, a living entity that seemed to press in on them from all sides. As the minutes ticked by, the feeling of being watched grew stronger, each student's paranoia feeding into the collective fear. The gym, once a place of physical challenge, had become a labyrinth of psychological terror. The sinister presence lurking in the shadows was just beginning to make itself known, and the students had only begun to scratch the surface of the horrors that awaited them in the depths of the midnight gym class. Chapter 2: Shadows in the Bleachers. The students' attempts to engage in their workout routine felt increasingly futile as the oppressive atmosphere of the gym began to take its toll. The cold seemed to settle deeper into their bones with every passing minute, and the flickering lights overhead created an unsettling stroboscopic effect that made it hard to keep track of time. The uneasy silence was periodically broken by an array of strange noises. Faint whispers, the occasional thump, and a myriad of unsettling sounds that seemed to emanate from the darkest corners of the gym. Emma was the first to notice the growing intensity of these noises. As she performed her jumping jacks, her gaze drifted toward the locker rooms, where she could have sworn she saw shadows flitting just out of sight. Each time she turned to look, the shadows seemed to vanish, leaving only the unsettling feeling that she was not alone. Her attempts to shake off the feeling only intensified her anxiety. Ryan, meanwhile, was engaged in a series of push-ups, his face inches from the cold gym floor. As he counted out loud, he saw something move in the corner of his eye. He glanced up to see a dark shape darting past the bleachers. The shadow was swift and formless, vanishing almost as quickly as it appeared. He tried to convince himself it was merely a trick of the light, but the sense of dread that followed was unmistakable. Alex, on the other hand, felt an overwhelming sense of paranoia. His movements were jerky and unfocused, his eyes constantly scanning the gym for any sign of movement. It was as if a watchful presence was tracking his every step, causing a cold sweat to form on his brow. No matter where he looked, he felt the unshakable sensation that he was being observed by something malevolent. The gym's atmosphere seemed to grow denser with each passing moment. The once silent corners now seemed to hum with a low, almost imperceptible vibration. The students' breaths came out in rapid, visible puffs as they struggled to maintain their focus. The once familiar gym was now an alien environment, its usual comforts overshadowed by a growing sense of unease. Emma's anxiety reached its peak when she heard a sudden, loud slam echo through the gym. The noise seemed to come from the locker rooms, a forceful bang that reverberated through the silence. She stopped mid-exercise, her heart racing as she looked toward the source of the sound. The locker room doors were slightly ajar, but no one emerged from them. The sound was chilling in its suddenness, a stark reminder of their isolation. Ryan, attempting to brush off his earlier encounter, continued his routine, but his unease was palpable. As he moved towards the bleachers to stretch, he noticed something peculiar. The shadows on the bleachers seemed to shift and writhe, as if they were alive. He rubbed his eyes, convinced it was a trick of the light, but the shadows persisted in their unnatural dance. His movements grew more hurried, his attempts to ignore the strange phenomenon only amplifying his fear. Alex was on edge, his paranoia reaching its limits. Every creak and whisper seemed to take on a new level of menace. His breathing grew erratic as he tried to push through the exercises, but his eyes were constantly drawn to the darkened corners of the gym. The feeling of being watched was almost tangible, a suffocating weight that made it hard for him to concentrate on anything but the oppressive sense of dread. Their fear became a shared experience, growing more intense as the minutes dragged on. The gym, once a place of physical exertion, had transformed into a labyrinth of terror. The shadows and noises seemed to conspire against them, weaving a web of paranoia and fear that tightened with every passing moment. Suddenly, a collective gasp broke the silence. Emma, who had been facing the bleachers, saw a shadowy figure standing in the distance, just beyond the reach of the flickering lights. The figure was indistinct, a mass of shifting darkness that seemed to pulse with an eerie, malevolent energy. It was only visible for a fleeting moment before it vanished into the gloom, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. The sight of the shadowy figure sent a shockwave of fear through the group. Emma's heart raced, her legs feeling like lead as she tried to steady her breathing. Ryan's eyes widened in disbelief, his earlier skepticism giving way to a raw, primal fear. Alex, his nerves frayed, felt a surge of terror that was almost paralyzing. The shadowy figure's brief appearance had intensified their collective fear, and the gym's oppressive atmosphere seemed to close in around them. The students huddled together, their earlier attempts at maintaining normalcy abandoned. They whispered among themselves, their voices trembling as they tried to make sense of the disturbing vision. The gym, with its cold, shadow-filled corners and eerie silence, felt like a prison from which there was no escape. As the minutes ticked by, their fear grew into a palpable force, feeding off the shadows and the strange noises that seemed to grow more insistent. The gym had become a place of terror, its usual echoes now a chorus of unsettling sounds and fleeting apparitions. The sense of something lurking just beyond the edges of their vision was inescapable, and the shadowy presence they had glimpsed seemed to be a harbinger of the horrors yet to come. In the dim, flickering light, the students could only wait and wonder what lay ahead. The gym had revealed its first unsettling secret, and they were left grappling with the realization that their ordeal was only beginning. The shadowy figure's brief appearance had set the stage for a deeper, more sinister game, and the gym's cold, dark corners held secrets that would soon come to light. As the gym's oppressive silence settled back over them, the students could only brace themselves for the next chapter in their terrifying ordeal, their fears and paranoia growing with every passing moment. The shadows in the bleachers seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and the gym's eerie silence promised that their encounter with the darkness was far from over. Chapter 3. The game begins. The tension in the gym reached a crescendo as the students huddled together, their breaths coming out in shuddering gasps. The oppressive silence was shattered by the sudden, jarring clang of an old-fashioned gym bell. The sound reverberated through the cavernous space, cutting through the thick atmosphere of dread that had enveloped them. The students jumped in unison, their hearts pounding in their chests. A distorted voice, echoing with an eerie resonance, filled the gym. It was neither warm nor welcoming, but carried a chilling undertone that sent shivers down their spines. "Welcome to the game," the voice intoned. "To leave this place, you must complete a series of tasks. Each task will test your courage and your will. Fail to complete them, and you will remain here forever." The students exchanged horrified glances, their earlier apprehensions now morphing into full-blown fear. The implications of the announcement were clear. They were not just enduring a punishment, but were trapped in a life-threatening ordeal that demanded more than just physical endurance. A spotlight flickered on, casting a harsh beam of light onto a set of instructions pinned to a wall near the bleachers. The instructions were handwritten in a scrawling, almost illegible script that seemed to writhe on the page. "The first task," the voice continued, "is to find the hidden key. It is concealed within the gym, waiting to be discovered. Fail to retrieve it within 20 minutes, and the consequences will be dire." Emma, her hands trembling, stepped forward to read the instructions. "We have to find a key," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But where could it be hidden?" Ryan, trying to keep his composure, surveyed the gym's surroundings. "We need to split up," he suggested. "The sooner we find this key, the sooner we can get out of here." Alex nodded in agreement, though his face was pale and drawn. "Just stay alert," he warned. "We don't know what else might be lurking in here." The students scattered, their movements hurried and fraught with anxiety. Emma headed toward the locker rooms, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The dim lighting and cold air made the lockers seem even more imposing, their metal surfaces cold and unyielding. She opened each locker with shaking hands, scanning for anything that might resemble a key or a clue. Ryan moved toward the bleachers, his eyes scanning the darkened corners. The shadows seemed to play tricks on his mind, and every rustle or creak made him jump. He climbed up the bleachers, peering into every crevice and corner. The shadows seemed to move, their eerie shapes flickering in the dim light, but there was no sign of the key. Alex took a different approach, focusing on the gym's equipment. He examined the weight benches, treadmills, and exercise mats, lifting and checking each one with growing desperation. The gym, which usually held the promise of physical challenge, now seemed like a maze of potential traps and hidden dangers. As the minutes ticked away, the students' fear intensified. The gym's atmosphere seemed to grow more oppressive, the air thick with a sense of impending doom. The whispers that had once been faint and distant now seemed to grow louder, filling their ears with a cacophony of unsettling sounds. Emma, her heart racing, pulled open the last locker in the row, her hands shaking uncontrollably. As she reached inside, her fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. She pulled out a small, ornate key, its surface glinting in the dim light. Relief washed over her, but it was quickly replaced by a renewed sense of fear as she realized that this was only the beginning. With the key in hand, Emma hurried back to the others, her face a mask of anxiety and determination. "I found it," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "We need to figure out where it goes." The distorted voice returned, its tone almost gleeful. "Well done, you have completed the first task. Now prepare for the next challenge." A hidden door in the gym, previously unnoticed, creaked open, revealing a dimly lit passage. The students stared at the passageway with a mix of dread and determination. The voice continued, "Your next task is to navigate the maze. Inside, you will find clues that will lead you to the exit. Beware, for the maze is filled with traps and illusions designed to test your resolve." Without further ado, the students entered the passageway, their steps echoing in the narrow, dark corridor. The air was cold and damp, and the faint smell of mildew and decay clung to their clothes. The passage twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the gym's labyrinthine structure. As they made their way through the maze, the students encountered various obstacles, false paths that led to dead ends, sudden drops, and eerie, flickering lights that played tricks on their eyes. The maze seemed to shift and change, its layout altering with each turn they took. The sense of being watched grew stronger, and the whispers from earlier seemed to follow them, growing louder and more insistent. At one point, Emma stumbled upon a set of cryptic symbols etched into the wall. She paused to examine them, her mind racing to decipher their meaning. "These symbols might be a clue," she said, her voice barely audible over the eerie whispers. "We need to figure out what they mean." Ryan and Alex joined her, their faces etched with concentration. They worked together, piecing together the symbols and deciphering their meaning. The symbols pointed toward a hidden compartment in the maze, which, when opened, revealed a series of puzzles and riddles that needed to be solved to progress further. The puzzles were complex and unsettling, each one revealing more about the sinister presence that lurked in the gym. The students were forced to confront their deepest fears and insecurities as they solved each puzzle, their fear and anxiety escalating with every step. As they continued through the maze, the sense of dread grew more intense. The traps and illusions became more elaborate, and the gym's sinister presence seemed to close in around them. The once familiar space was now a nightmarish labyrinth, each turn revealing new horrors and challenges. The students' unity was tested as they faced each new challenge. Their trust in each other was crucial to their survival, and their fear threatened to tear them apart. But despite the growing danger, they pressed on, determined to complete the game and escape the gym's nightmarish grip. The maze seemed to stretch on endlessly, its dark corridors and shifting walls, a relentless test of their resolve. As they navigated the final twists and turns, the students could only hope that they were nearing the end of their ordeal, their fear and exhaustion pushing them to their limits. In the heart of the maze, they encountered the final challenge, a room filled with mirrors that distorted their reflections into grotesque and terrifying shapes. The The distorted images seemed to mock their fears, their deepest insecurities laid bare. The voice echoed once more. To escape, you must confront your fears and find the true reflection of yourselves. The students braced themselves for the final confrontation, their resolve tested to its breaking point. The maze had pushed them to their limits, and the final challenge promised to be the most harrowing of all. As they faced the mirrors and their own distorted reflections, they knew that their survival depended on their ability to confront their fears and work together. The sinister presence in the gym had only begun to reveal itself, and the students' journey through the maze was a testament to their courage and determination. The game had only just begun, and the true extent of the horrors that awaited them remained hidden in the shadows of the gym's darkened corridors. Chapter 4: Secrets in the Locker Rooms. The atmosphere in the gym was heavy with dread as Alex and Emma, their faces pale with anxiety, made their way toward the locker rooms. The maze had tested their resolve, but the unsettling whispers and the ominous voice had convinced them that they needed to uncover the truth about the gym's dark history. With each step, the floor seemed to groan beneath them, as if the very building was alive with malevolent intent. The locker rooms were shrouded in darkness, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows across the rows of metal lockers. The cold, stale air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Emma shivered involuntarily as she reached for the rusty doorknob, her hand trembling. She pushed the door open with a creak, and the room was revealed in a dim, flickering light. Alex's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the rows of lockers lined up against the walls. The lockers were dented and rusted, their once bright paint now peeling and faded. The lockers were covered in layers of dust, and a sense of abandonment hung in the air. Emma began to inspect the lockers, pulling open each one with a creak. Inside, they found old gym uniforms, dusty sneakers, and a collection of forgotten personal items. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until Emma came across a particularly battered locker near the back of the room. It was different from the rest, its surface scratched and defaced with crude symbols. "This locker looks different," Emma said, her voice low and cautious. "There might be something here." Alex joined her, examining the locker closely. The door was stuck, and after a few attempts, Alex managed to force it open. Inside, the locker was empty except for a small, leather-bound book wedged in the corner. Alex pulled it out and wiped away the thick layer of dust, revealing a journal with a cracked and worn cover. Emma's heart raced as Alex carefully opened the journal. The pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was frantic and uneven. As they read, the journal revealed a series of entries detailing the experiences of previous students who had faced similar situations. The accounts were disturbing, describing encounters with terrifying apparitions, strange occurrences, and a growing sense of dread. One entry, written in a particularly frantic hand, stood out. "They're watching us. We tried to escape, but the gym is alive. It won't let us leave. We are trapped here forever." Emma's eyes widened as she read the entry aloud. "This journal, it talks about students who never got out. It's like they're warning us." Alex looked around the locker room, his eyes scanning the dimly lit space. "We need to find out more about this place. There has to be a reason why the gym is doing this." They continued their search, uncovering more disturbing items hidden away in the lockers. They found photographs of past students, their faces obscured by shadows or blurred as if intentionally distorted. In one locker, they discovered a collection of old, faded newspaper clippings, some detailing unexplained disappearances and others reporting on mysterious accidents that had occurred in the gym over the years. As they delved deeper into their investigation, the sinister presence in the gym grew more aggressive. The locker room seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy. The temperature dropped sharply, and a cold, biting draft swept through the room. The flickering lights cast erratic shadows on the walls, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Emma suddenly gasped as she saw a shadowy figure dart across the room, its form barely visible in the dim light. "Alex, did you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alex spun around, his flashlight sweeping the room. "I saw something move," he said, his voice tight with fear. "We need to be careful." The shadowy figure reappeared, this time more distinct. It seemed to be a translucent apparition, its features obscured, but its presence undeniably menacing. The figure floated through the air, its movements eerily fluid, and it let out a low, mournful wail that reverberated through the locker room. Emma and Alex exchanged terrified glances as the apparition drew closer, its chilling presence filling the room with an oppressive sense of dread. The temperature continued to drop, and the cold air felt like it was closing in on them. Suddenly, the apparition lunged toward them, its form shifting and distorting into a nightmarish visage. Alex and Emma stumbled back, their hearts racing. The apparition's face was twisted into a grotesque expression of agony, and its eyes glowed with a malevolent light. In a panic, Alex grabbed a nearby gym bag and swung it at the apparition, but it passed through the ghostly figure as if it were made of mist. The apparition let out a high-pitched, ghostly shriek, and the lights flickered violently before plunging the room into darkness. Emma and Alex were plunged into an abyss of darkness, their breaths coming out in ragged gasps. The darkness was oppressive, and the only sound was their pounding hearts and the distant echoes of the apparition's wail. They fumbled for their flashlights, their hands shaking as they tried to find a way out of the locker room. When the lights flickered back on, the apparition had vanished, leaving behind an air of palpable fear. The locker room was silent once more, but the sense of dread remained. Emma and Alex knew that their investigation had uncovered something far more sinister than they had anticipated. "We need to find that hidden room mentioned in the journal," Emma said, her voice shaky but determined. "There might be more answers there." They continued their search, guided by the cryptic messages and clues they had found. Their fear was palpable, but their determination to uncover the truth pushed them forward. They explored every inch of the locker room, searching for any hidden doors or secret compartments. Finally, Alex discovered a concealed panel behind a row of lockers. With a great effort, he pried it open to reveal a narrow passageway leading to a hidden room. The room was small and dimly lit, its walls lined with old, dusty shelves filled with forgotten gym equipment and discarded personal items. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate chest. The chest was intricately carved with disturbing symbols and patterns that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. Alex and Emma exchanged anxious glances before approaching the chest. With a deep breath, Alex opened the chest to reveal its contents. Inside were more journals, each one filled with disturbing accounts of previous students who had faced the same trials. The journals detailed the horrifying experiences of those who had entered the gym, their accounts growing more desperate and frantic as they progressed. Emma picked up one of the journals and began to read. The entries described nightmarish encounters with apparitions, sinister traps, and the relentless sense of being watched. The journal's final entry was particularly chilling. "The gym is a prison, and we are its captives. There is no escape." The revelation hit them hard. The gym was not just a setting for their ordeal. It was a living entity with its own dark will, preying on those who entered its domain. The sense of hopelessness that pervaded the journal was palpable, and Alex and Emma realized that their fight for survival was far from over. The sinister presence in the gym had become more aggressive, its apparitions more ghastly, and its threats more physical. The gym's dark history was intertwined with their own predicament, and the realization that they were trapped in a malevolent force's grasp filled them with a new level of terror. As they left the hidden room and returned to the main gym area, Alex and Emma were determined to uncover more about the gym's dark past and to find a way to escape its nightmarish grip. The sinister presence continued to lurk in the shadows, its threats becoming more tangible and its attacks more frequent. The gym's malevolent force had only begun to reveal its full power, and the students' fight for survival was far from over. With each new discovery, they edged closer to the truth, but also deeper into the heart of the gym's darkness. The sinister game was far from over, and the true extent of the horrors that awaited them remained hidden in the shadows. Chapter 5: The Truth Revealed. The gym was cold and silent, the air thick with an almost palpable sense of foreboding. Alex, Emma, and Ryan, their hearts pounding, huddled together in the dim light of their flashlights. They had returned to the main gym area after their harrowing experience in the locker rooms, their minds racing with the disturbing revelations they had uncovered. Their conversation had been intense and fraught with anxiety as they tried to piece together the fragments of the journal entries and the cryptic clues they had found. The hidden room, with its dark secrets, had only deepened the mystery surrounding the gym. It was clear that the malevolent force they were dealing with was far more complex and dangerous than they had initially thought. The sound of footsteps echoed through the gym, causing them to freeze. Mr. Thompson, their gym teacher, emerged from the shadows, his face grim and expressionless. The sight of him caused a wave of unease to wash over the students. They had been so focused on their own survival that they had overlooked one crucial detail: the true role of their instructor in this nightmarish ordeal. "Mr. Thompson," Alex called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "We need to talk. We've discovered something about this gym and its history." Mr. Thompson's eyes flickered with a mixture of fear and resignation. He sighed heavily, as if the weight of an immense burden was finally becoming too much to bear. "I suppose it's time you knew the truth," he said, his voice hollow. "This gym and everything that happens here is part of a curse that I've been bound to for years." The students exchanged bewildered glances, their anxiety mounting. "What do you mean?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "How are you connected to all of this?" Mr. Thompson took a deep breath and began to recount his own harrowing experience. "Many years ago, when I was a student just like you, I faced a similar ordeal in this very gym. The malevolent presence you're dealing with feeds on fear and despair. I managed to survive the ordeal, but the curse wasn't broken. Instead, it's been passed down, and I've been forced to perpetuate the cycle." As Mr. Thompson spoke, the students listened in stunned silence. The truth was more horrifying than they had imagined. The gym's sinister presence was not just a random haunting, it was a force that thrived on the fear of those trapped within its walls. "The game," Mr. Thompson continued, "it's designed to feed the entity's hunger. It traps people in their worst nightmares, feeding off their fear until they either succumb or manage to escape. But escape is rare. The presence is too powerful." The realization hit the students with a jolt. They understood now why the gym's malevolent force had been so relentless in its pursuit of their terror. It was not merely a test, it was a method of sustaining an ancient, dark power. "Why didn't you tell us this before?" Ryan demanded, his voice rising with anger. "You've been making us suffer." Mr. Thompson's eyes were filled with sorrow and shame. "I was bound by the same curse that keeps the entity alive. I had no choice but to follow its demands. But now, you have a chance, perhaps the only chance, to break the cycle. If you face your deepest fears and confront the entity head-on, you might be able to end its reign of terror." The weight of Mr. Thompson's revelation hung heavy in the air. The students knew that their situation was dire, but now they had a glimmer of hope. If they could confront their fears and unravel the malevolent presence's grip, they might be able to escape the gym's nightmarish clutches. The gym's lights flickered ominously, and a chill swept through the room, signaling the beginning of a new phase in their ordeal. The students felt the malevolent presence growing stronger, its influence more pronounced than ever before. "We need to confront this entity," Alex said resolutely. "If we're going to break this curse, we have to face our fears and find a way to end this madness." With newfound determination, the students prepared themselves for the final confrontation. They had to navigate through the labyrinth of their own anxieties and the gym's malevolent tricks to confront the presence that had haunted them for so long. They steeled themselves for the trials ahead, knowing that the final showdown would test their resolve and courage to the limit. The gym seemed to sense their resolve, its dark power intensifying as if it were preparing for the ultimate battle. The sinister force was not going to let them leave easily, and the students' journey was far from over. As they ventured deeper into the gym's heart, they could feel the presence closing in, its malevolence palpable and oppressive. The final phase of the game had begun, and the students knew that their struggle against the malevolent entity was only just starting. They would have to face their deepest fears, overcome the gym's traps, and confront the darkness that had plagued them for so long. The stakes had never been higher. and their survival depended on their ability to confront the horrors that awaited them and break free from the cursed gym's grasp. As they ventured forward, the students knew that their greatest challenge lay ahead. The gym's dark history and the malevolent presence were intertwined with their own fate, and the path to freedom was fraught with peril. But they were determined to see it through, knowing that their fight against the darkness was their only hope for breaking the cycle and escaping the gym's eternal nightmare. Chapter 6: The Final Test. The dawn was still a distant promise as the gym's eerie ambience reached its peak. The cold, oppressive air seemed to vibrate with malevolent anticipation as Alex, Emma, and Ryan stood together, bracing themselves for what was to come. Their ordeal had led them to this climactic moment where they would confront the entity that had tormented them from the start. The gym had transformed into a twisted battleground of their deepest fears. The lights flickered erratically, casting long, sinister shadows that danced menacingly on the walls. The once familiar surroundings now seemed alien and hostile, twisted by the presence that controlled them. Each corner of the gym held potential horrors, waiting to test their resolve. A deep, rumbling voice reverberated through the gym, chilling them to their core. Welcome to the final test. To escape, you must confront your greatest fears and prove your worth. Fail, and you will remain trapped in this nightmare. Alex, Emma, and Ryan exchanged determined glances, their resolve solidifying. They knew that overcoming their fears was the key to escaping the gym and breaking the curse. The entity's voice seemed to mock them, a reminder of the terror they had endured and the trials they still faced. Without warning, the gym began to shift, the floor and walls warping into a nightmarish landscape. Alex was the first to face his fears. The gym floor opened up, revealing a cavernous abyss filled with shadowy figures, manifestations of his deepest anxieties. He had to navigate this treacherous chasm, each step fraught with the terror of falling into the darkness below. He fought to maintain his composure, each step a battle against the suffocating dread that threatened to overwhelm him. Emma's challenge came next. The once empty locker rooms now appeared as labyrinthine tunnels, echoing with disembodied whispers and distorted laughter. She had to traverse this eerie maze while being pursued by phantom figures that seemed to mock her every move. Emma's courage was tested as she confronted the haunting echoes of her insecurities, pushing forward with determination to find her way out of the nightmare. Ryan's trial was perhaps the most disturbing. The gym's bleachers transformed into a grotesque, shifting landscape where grotesque, spectral images replayed his past failures and fears. He had to confront these harrowing visions head-on, grappling with his sense of inadequacy and self-doubt. Each image was a painful reminder of his perceived shortcomings, but he faced them with a resolve that surprised even himself. As they tackled their individual challenges, the gym seemed to respond, growing increasingly tumultuous. The malevolent presence roared with frustration, its power surging as it tried to intensify their fears. The walls trembled and the shadows writhed, but Alex, Emma, and Ryan pressed on, their determination unwavering. After what felt like an eternity, the gym's oppressive atmosphere began to shift. The trials of their fears had taken a toll, but they had also forged a deeper bond between them. They had faced their darkest moments and emerged stronger, united by their shared ordeal. Finally, the entity's voice boomed once more, this time tinged with a sense of defeat. You have proven yourselves worthy. The curse is broken, and you are free to leave. As the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, the gym gradually returned to its normal state. The flickering lights steadied and the cold air receded. Alex, Emma, and Ryan stood together, exhausted but triumphant. The dawn was breaking outside, casting a faint, hopeful light through the gym's windows. The students made their way to the exit, their hearts heavy with the weight of their experiences. They stepped out of the gym into the early morning light, the air crisp and fresh, a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness they had just left behind. The gym, now eerily silent, seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the end of its malevolent reign. In the aftermath, the gym's dark history was left in the shadows, its sinister presence diminished but not entirely vanquished. The students knew that while they had escaped the immediate danger, the gym's curse might still linger, waiting for another opportunity to strike. Yet for now, they had triumphed over the darkness and emerged into the light of a new day. As they walked away from the gym, the reality of their ordeal began to sink in. The experience had left its mark on them, shaping their perspectives and testing their courage in ways they had never imagined. They reflected on their journey, the trials they had faced, and the strength they had found within themselves. Their shared ordeal had forged a bond between them, one that would endure long after the gym's curse had been lifted. They had faced their deepest fears and emerged victorious, their courage and determination serving as a testament to their strength. The gym's darkness might have been vanquished for now, but the memory of their ordeal would remain with them, a reminder of the resilience they had discovered within themselves. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the students looked toward the future with a newfound sense of hope and strength. The gym, with its haunting past and sinister presence, was now just a shadow in their memories, a dark chapter in their lives that they had overcome. The dawn of a new day signified not just the end of their nightmare, but the beginning of a brighter, more hopeful future.